Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, George Almasri. On this episode, I interviewed Kirsten and Eileen. Eileen Fauster was on the show a little while ago, May of last year, to be exact. They are nutritionists and are practitioners of holistic health, I guess you would say. So on this episode, they actually gave me a 7-page outline of the things we covered, which was a little bit unique. I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff. We generally talked about stress and how to mitigate stress in your life through several key factors. We also talked about how stress impacts your body, the cortisol relationship, your circadian rhythm, sleep, all these things. So I know a lot of people have been under immense pressure because of really tight cash flow, high rates, refi values not coming in. So investors are feeling it, and that's based on a lot of conversations that I've had. I think this is going to be helpful to a lot of people. So I hope you'll enjoy the content. You're more than welcome to leave us a 5-star review, and that would be greatly appreciated. Share this with a friend or family member that's going through a stressful time right now. Let's make sure to help as many people as possible. And if you want to connect with me to discuss some really cool off-market opportunities, we've got a couple in the Niagara region. There's a triplex that I have off the top of my head, and a couple other ones that I'd be happy to discuss with you. So feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at welloffx, and I hope you'll enjoy the episode. This episode was brought to you by Mortgage Dawn with Go Pineapple. All right, I'm here with Eileen and Kirsten. Eileen was on the show probably a year ago,
May
roughly.
2022.
May 2022. There you go. She provided me with a document of about 9 pages, I believe, which is excellent because we're going to be covering some really good stuff. Kirsten, it's your first time on the show. So why don't you start off by telling us a bit about your childhood and where you grew up, because we already had that from Eileen.
Okay. So, like I said, my name is Kirsten Colella. I grew up in Toronto, Scarborough. And I became a holistic nutritionist about 8 years ago now. What is it? How old is my child? I became a holistic nutritionist 6 years ago, and I know because I gave birth to my second child about a week afterwards, so that's how I remember.
A week after she graduated.
Yes.
So going through final exams, 8.5 months pregnant, and I always brag about Kirsten because as testament to our hard work and dedication, any woman who knows what the final stage of pregnancy feels like, Kirsten was going through final exams.
Yes, and I was waddling up on that graduation stage. But and holistic nutrition is actually my second career. I was a property manager for about 5 years, working for in downtown Toronto, managing office buildings. So that's why being on a podcast such as this is especially fun for me, because it gets to tie both worlds.
Yeah.
And property management, I always found it fun because it's always something new every single day. It's definitely not a sedentary job, but it definitely requires a lot of energy and focus. And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so the topic today is going to be about stress management, that sort of thing. So maybe we can start off. I know we have a bit of an outline here on a couple things we want to discuss. What do you think? Where do you think we should start off?
I think the first thing you need to know is that in order to grow your wealth, you need to take care of your health. I don't care what your financial goals are, it's going to require you, your brain and your body. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be reaching your full potential. And it's also what you're doing is not sustainable.
I concur 110%. You need to be not just physically strong and able every day, but what stress is doing for you, it's robbing you of what I call your cognitive stamina, meaning that, yes, you're awake and moving, but your brain function, and we'll mention the heavy phrase prefrontal cortex later on, that your brain function, especially for executive function, tough decisions, etc., you need I won't say to be stress-free, but you need to be managing your stress in such a way that biochemically your brain is working at optimally, because we need that, obviously, when you're making big, heavy financial decisions.
Of course. So why don't we go through some of the warning signs And you can jump in if there's ever anything you want to.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm hearing from you ladies, that stress, that cognitive ability, like they're very much intertwined, and it's
Yes.
really coming down to the science, the chemicals inside your body, how they kind of
Yeah.
work in conjunction with each other.
By the way, that person speaking is my wife, Mandy, who's been on the show before, but in case anyone's hearing her for the first time. So let's go into the warning signs.
Yeah, so here's some warning signs that you're heading towards burnout. Is if you're having trouble waking up in the morning, if you have to hit that snooze button multiple times, that's a big warning sign. If you feel dizzy upon standing, especially if you're feeling anxious or stressed or overwhelmed, big warning sign.
That's so interesting, the dizzy upon standing. I would have never correlated stress to that. What's the reason you would get dizzy?
So it all comes back to, it has to do with cortisol, and it has to do with, so our stress hormone is cortisol. That's our long-term stress hormone. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. But cortisol also has what's called mineral corticoid properties, means it can affect your electrolyte balance. So if your cortisol is off balance, your electrolytes might also be off balance. So you might be craving some salty food. That's also why when we're stressed, our blood pressure increases. So high cortisol means higher blood pressure. But as you will find out when we get into this discussion, that high cortisol can become low cortisol, or just, we'll say, an imbalance of the two.
Or it's high or low at the wrong times
Yeah.
of day.
Yeah, you don't have the natural curve that you want. And that if it's too low, then your body's not able to adjust. So that when you go from lying down to standing up, your blood pressure is supposed to increase so that you don't fall over. And if it's not working as it should, then your blood pressure is not going to adjust and you'll feel a little dizzy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. I feel like I've had those moments where like I would kind of crouch down and grab something and then stand up, and then I get kind of dizzy, which I never used to feel, but now I kind of know that it could be a stress related issue.
Yeah. And when you go to the doctor, do they say you have low blood pressure? Because you don't have to say, but if they say you have low blood pressure, that's not necessarily good. I mean, your doctor might be applauding you, saying, "Oh yeah, low blood pressure is better than high blood pressure," but not if you're
Chronically
over.
low.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just something to think about.
Interesting. Okay. So using coffee or sugar to keep you going through the day, alcohol, chips, and TV to relax at night, trouble focusing on a task, emotional regulation. These are all kind of signs that you might be stressed out.
And so is getting sick all the time. It's like being sick.
Or easily sick.
Yes. And also when you get sick, you feel it more. So suddenly, like a common cold is just going to wipe you out. Whereas maybe in the past you could have a cold and still be going to work, going partying at night, whatever. But now, like, having a cold seems like the worst thing.
Interesting. These are all like things that probably most people wouldn't be aware of or wouldn't connect to stress, right?
Or that they experience
And
on
the
a
last
day-to-day
thing is,
basis.
other thing is hormonal issues. So if there's really bad PMS, or if you're having a lot of symptoms when you're going through menopause, or low testosterone in men, those are also signs that you're
What about
burnt out.
frequent hot flashes?
Yeah, because that's
I was just about to ask that. So basically, you're saying that any of those symptoms, if people are having them, could be reversed or lessened dramatically with, what would you say, nutrition
Well, we're going to get into
Nutrition
all that.
and lifestyle.
and
Yes.
lifestyle?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's more than just nutrition, but
Okay.
yeah.
So it also says here in the notes that it could be from not enough rest. But obviously stress and rest are related. So maybe we'll dive into that a little bit. Is there anything else that we want to discuss on the warning signs?
No, we just want to say it's like if this sounds like you, if this all sounds familiar, then this podcast is for you. This is why we're here.
Well, I think that a lot of people now, based on conversations that I've had and just in general, because of the stress of higher interest rates and people having less cash flow and having to put out more fires in their businesses, it's leading to more of these symptoms, I would find. So I think it is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to jump right now to the disclaimer. The strategies we're discussing today are not meant to replace medical advice. We are not doctors, In fact, this podcast, even though we are nutritionists, does not replace formal nutritional counseling either. We're talking at a higher level, just talking general terms. If you do have a problem and or you want to seek assistance, please go one-on-one with medical/holistic person.
Yeah. And it's important you got to do your due diligence when it comes to your health, just as you would when you're looking at an asset. So how do you do your due diligence for your health? You got to, if you're having a symptom and you're not sure if that's a symptom of something medical or if you need diet and lifestyle changes, check with your doctor first, rule out the medical. It's when the doctor says you're fine, your blood work is fine, then you're going to start looking at diet and lifestyle, because you don't want to be ignoring something that needs medical attention. Like, here's a good example. A sore throat could be a virus. It could be strep throat, which is a bacteria that usually requires antibiotics. And so that's where if you have a sore throat, maybe you're going to call your doctor. The doctor will come do a throat swab and they'll say yes or no. And then if you know if it's a virus, okay, the doctor is going to say just go home and get some rest. That's when you bring in the vitamin C, the zinc, bone broth, herbs, echinacea. You do all the natural things, but you've ruled out the medical. So that's how holistic health is not about alternative health. It's about complementary and understanding when you need to go the natural route, when you need to get medical attention, and when you can use both, and also when they're going to contraindicate.
Okay, sounds good. So,
That's a great point.
So in terms of the next point here, which is how does stress affect our body, or affect our body? Can you go through that?
Yeah. So stress affects the body neurologically. So our nervous system is going to respond to stress. So that's our brain and our spinal cord, our nerves, and so is our hormones. So it's going to respond biochemically. And how that works is we have just quick anatomy lesson. We've got the hypothalamus in our brain. And then we also have a gland in our brain called the pituitary gland. And that pituitary gland is hormone headquarters. So it'll send these chemical messages, hormones, to other glands in the body, saying, hey, this is what's going on. So when we are stressed, the hypothalamus is going to send signal to the pituitary gland, which will then send signal to the adrenal glands. And these adrenal glands, renal as in kidney, they sit atop the kidneys, and that's what releases our stress hormone. And the stress hormone that we're going to talk about today is cortisol. It also releases adrenaline hormones like norepinephrine and epinephrine, but that's for acute stressful situations that are less common. So we're going to focus more on the cortisol because that's what we have to deal with every day.
Okay. Any questions?
No, my brain is just going through this because I know from so many discussions with both of you that, okay, I drink coffee, or I was drinking coffee, but quitting coffee actually helps with a lot of these things that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
And that's the effect that caffeine has on.
Caffeine is the, Achilles heel, what is it that Superman? Kryptonite?
Yeah.
Cortisol. Caffeine and cortisol are not friends. They're bitter enemies.
Yeah. So I know personally how much it affects the body. So it's great to hear you kind of explaining that from the biochemical standpoint.
Yeah, because once you understand why, especially when it's something you don't want to do, like give up coffee, but if you can really understand what's going on in your body and how it's going to affect your main goals,
for sure,
then it's easier.
And that's how when we work with clients, I mean, everyone knows, okay, too much coffee is not good. Spinach is good for you. Water is good for you. But when I'm able to sit one-on-one across from a client and explain in their particular situation why they need more water, why they need more greens, why they need more of a good thing and less of a bad thing, and they understand how too much of this bad thing has contributed to whatever is bothering them health-wise, then it's a lot easier to be motivated and say, okay, I got to make some changes. And I always say, and this is how we as humans work, it's easier to increase a good habit than it is to take away a bad. So if someone's not ready to give up their vice, but it's easier to include more good things, more salad, more water, more, walking, then that already is a big plus.
That must be a big hurdle that you both face, changing the habits.
Well, it depends on how motivated the client is.
Sure.
The client has to walk in ready to put some skin in the game. They can't just walk in and say, hey, help me, but I'm not going to make changes. That's when you go medically, because they'll give you a pill.
I mean, and our goal is also to help support them so that in a way that these changes are easier. And
and we've got lots of ideas.
Yeah. So that's what we're always thinking about, is also like, what's the client's schedule? You know, we're not going to tell them to prep food for 4 hours a day if they have a really busy work life. So,
and even if you're eating out a lot, which I assume a lot of people, a lot of your listeners are busy during the day, that they're grabbing lunch on the road, there are ways to eat out and do it in a healthy manner, right? And so, you know, these are the things that we discuss one-on-one.
So if we go back to our little itinerary here, so what does cortisol do?
Okay. So the main purpose of cortisol is to increase blood sugar. Now, I know your listeners are probably thinking, well, high blood sugar, that's not good for you. Yes and no. Having high blood sugar in certain situations can help you cope with stress.
So to actually understand how it's doing that, we have to think of, because stress is a very primal response. So the type of stress that our body is equipped to deal with is not financial stress, is not what we're talking about today. In order to understand cortisol, we have to think like back to our hunter-gatherer era, that the main form of stress, long-term stress we would have been a famine or like a really long winter. And so that's why we need high cortisol, because we're not taking in enough food. So cortisol is what's giving us that energy so that we have enough energy to keep us going. But high cortisol is kind of putting us into power saving mode. So that means we are we're using as little energy as possible, but we're conserving as much energy as possible. And how the body saves energy, how it conserves, it saves it as fat. So that's what cortisol is doing. And it's also, our brain needs a lot of energy. So we don't need our higher thinking part of our brain if we are in a stressful situation, if we're in a famine. So high cortisol affects the prefrontal cortex, which is like, you know, our higher thinking brain, decision making,
Problem
solving, you know, everything that we need to get us out of stressful situations today isn't working well if we're spiking cortisol. And then so it's like, okay, so what does high cortisol do in summary? Sugar cravings, because you want quick energy, weight gain, low energy, and lack of focus.
So from what I'm hearing you say, that increased cortisol, that high stress environment could easily lead to weight gain, even if somebody feels, oh, I don't eat badly, or I don't, but they live in a very high stress environment. That could totally hang on to the extra fat cells in their body.
Body's preparing for a famine, because that's what
you're doing.
That's how it can understand what's going on. It doesn't understand, your body doesn't understand like financial pressure. It understands a famine.
Right. Or a famine could be a short-term famine, meaning you get up in the morning and it's already go, go, go. And by the time you have time to sit down and eat, it's 6, 7 p.m. So it's a mini famine. You haven't eaten all day. And it's not, you know, a 3 months, 6 months famine, but it's a mini one. And you're expecting the most out of your body during that time frame from, let's say, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. In those 10 hours, but you're not giving it any energy. So.
All right. And then with regards to sleeping and stress, so what's the correlation?
So cortisol is part of our natural circadian rhythm. So, you know, cortisol is not a bad thing, even though it being very high, we've just talked about it's not beneficial, but it is supposed to be present. It's going to be at its lowest around like 3 a.m. That's when we should be in a nice deep sleep. It's going to slowly increase and then reach its peak when it's time for us to wake up. So it's like 6 to 8 a.m. And then it's going to dip throughout the day until it's time to go to sleep. That's when melatonin comes in. And so it's like cortisol's the sun, melatonin's the moon.
Right. And so it is the high cortisol in your blood that wakes you up. And if I can jump in right now and talk about how caffeine is bad again. People that wake up in the morning and reach for their coffee, let's say within 15 minutes of waking up, they're having their cup of coffee. So caffeine is an artificial stimulant. And when you start relying on this artificial stimulant, your adrenal glands, which make cortisol, they say, oh, look, there's an artificial stimulant coming in. I don't need to make a lot of cortisol for first thing in the morning. So when your alarm goes off at 6, because your cortisol is not high, you're not energized and ready to jump out of bed. It's still low, but the clock says, hey, time to get your day going. And then you get up, you get your coffee going, that perks you up, and then you feel stimulated, and you've artificially raised your cortisol, and then you continue your day.
So what I've heard, which didn't come from a nutritionist or somebody, a professional, but they were saying that if you have your coffee, like say 2 hours after waking up or something, then it's not that bad, or I don't know. But
Yeah, I think I probably saw it's the same video, and it does make a lot of sense, because what you're doing in that case is you're letting your cortisol spike on its own. So you're letting your body naturally wake up. Hopefully maybe you're going outside and getting some fresh air, maybe some sunlight, because that's going to tell your brain it's morning. It's time to wake up. Please drink some water. You're asking for a headache if you drink coffee before you drink water. Maybe doing some movement. Then you have your coffee. And maybe it's just like 1 cup of coffee. So I'm like I don't try to tell people like, oh, maybe you have to absolutely give up coffee completely, because a lot of people will just say, well, I'm not. And I'm not calling you back. I'm not going to come back for a follow-up because I'm not listening to that. So I'm
that's like my sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So basically, if you're going to have just 1 cup of coffee, you have it a couple hours after waking up.
Yeah.
And there are things you can even take with the coffee or put in the coffee
To mitigate it. But
that we'll talk about later,
Yeah.
to make it
Okay.
so you don't get the jitters.
So for the coffee lovers that are listening, what you're saying is it's better to have your coffee maybe 1 to 2 hours after waking up, maybe going outside for a bit, getting some fresh air, some sunlight, as opposed to having it first thing in the morning when you first wake up, before having water, before having anything else.
Right.
Yes. If you are dragging yourself from bed to the coffee machine, that's a
good
problem.
sign.
That's a problem. It's about, you can enjoy it, but you shouldn't have to need it to live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we throw off our natural circadian rhythm?
So as we just mentioned, drinking coffee or anything else caffeinated, that's immediately, it's going to spike cortisol. That's,
Red Bulls.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Diet Pop.
Yeah.
so Diet Pop has caffeine. in it.
Ooh, lots.
Yeah.
Like almost as much as a cup of coffee.
Really?
And I do
Oh,
know
yeah.
people who maybe they don't drink coffee, but Diet Coke is what they use to keep them going throughout the day. So they'll like be drinking Diet Coke all day.
Is it the sweetener in the Diet Coke that has the caffeine in
No,
it?
They add caffeine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Didn't know
But
that.
not in regular pop.
Not in,
It's also in regular
Okay.
pop, but to a higher extent in the
Interesting.
in the
Yeah,
zero.
that's where
the
you-
zero pops.
you have to
yeah.
read the labels, because I think there's even some like Mountain Dew has like a lot of
Okay.
caffeine, certain ones. And sometimes some people who are really into exercising take pre-workout drinks, and they'll be natural, they'll be herbal, but they'll have something like green tea extract, or yerba mate is another one that's a natural herb, but it has a lot of caffeine in it. And especially if you're taking that, so you're taking that going to work out, and then you're still having your coffee, you might all of a sudden be like, why am I so anxious all the time? And it's because you're actually consuming a lot of caffeine. So
in a short
read
timeframe.
labels and like double check what you're consuming. Black tea also has caffeine. So does most chai teas will be made from black tea.
Green tea as well.
Green tea.
Green tea and
Yeah.
white tea. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything caffeine, anytime your blood sugar is low, you are going to spike cortisol, because that's what cortisol does. It increases your blood sugar. So if you've let your blood sugar go too low, cortisol is going to come in to be like, hey, wake up and eat something.
So the low blood sugar is from like going a long period of time without eating, or
Yes.
I guess there would be other ways as well.
Yeah. The other way is if you have something, if you like high blood sugar can become low blood sugar, because if you eat something really sweet,
You spike.
yeah, spike and then crash.
Mm-hmm.
Because often in this case, insulin, which is responsible for decreasing blood sugar, it will overcompensate. So if you eat something very high glycemic, this is, what's an example? What am I thinking?
Like cake
Donuts,
or donuts. Okay.
cake, or regular pop, or a nice coffee with a lot of sugar, because then you're getting the caffeine and the sugar. You're just spiking everything.
Like iced caps.
Yeah,
that
like
kind of
iced
stuff.
cappuccino or
Yeah.
frappuccinos. So that is 2 ways that you can make your blood sugar low. And then anything else that's a stress is going to increase cortisol. So that's the financial stress, emotional stress.
So does that also increase your blood sugar?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't
Yes.
know if we're touching on this, but is it possible if people are living in a state of constant stress that they're like, what would happen to their, I don't know if we're touching
We're
on
going to talk on that.
it. Are we? Okay.
It's the term adrenal fatigue, but we're
That's
coming to
which
that.
is actually the next point. On
Yeah,
the
it's-
list. Yeah.
We're coming
Yes,
to
we're
that.
gonna because what's gonna
Okay.
happen is that this is when you live in a constant state of stress, you'll find that your body can't go on like that forever.
Yeah.
But here, because when we think of stress, we're probably thinking like emotional stress, but actually like a pathogen, an infection is a type of stress. Just
Inflammation.
general inflammation in the body. What else is a stress?
Not eating enough or nutrition, like eating nutrient deficient foods. That's a stress on the body. Carrying around trauma,
Yes.
childhood traumas, or
What about like extra weight if you're carrying around extra weight or like, is
Yeah,
that just
that has-
physical stress? Like,
That is some. So like even physical trauma is absolutely a type of trauma. So if you have like a lot of joint pain or something like that,
that's what I was,
yeah,
yeah.
that can absolutely be. That's going to increase your cortisol, because like think of that, if you injured yourself and you're going through a famine again, like let's imagine these hunter gatherers, you're in a famine and you've injured yourself, you don't have time to stop and like fix that wound. You're going to have to keep running around trying to find food, you're trying to hunt, you're trying to gather. Same if you're sick, if you have to deal with an infection. So cortisol's there to help kind of give you that boost that you need. But there is it's expecting that there will be time when you can rest. And if you never do that, there will be a time when the body can no longer keep up with all this cortisol needs.
On that, sorry, I have another question about
Yeah.
that. Do you find that a lot of people come to you with questions about this because we live in such a high state of go, 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 and people don't really take the time to rest? Like, do you find a lot of your clients are coming to you with
Yes.
these types of...
Yeah.
I
What
don't
I
know.
Are
if it-
people like even identifying that it's a stress problem, or do they think it's something else? usually?
for them
They
it's
usually-
normal life.
They
A lot
usually
of them.
think it's something else.
Yeah.
Like they'll come in and they'll complain, like I'm tired all the time, and they'll be like, I'm really tired, I think I need a detox. Or like they'll be trying to change their diet further, like maybe change all their different macronutrient composition, be like, oh, I want to go on a paleo diet, I want to go on this type of diet, or I need to do this, or I'm just really not motivated. Like that's usually what they'll say. I'll have no motivation. And I was like, no, you're just really tired. And that's why we try to
So this
support
is a
people.
real thing
Yes.
people are experiencing.
I was also going to interject. So for people that are go, 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 stress, 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 and then they got whatever, 2 weeks vacation, and they go on vacation, and one day into the vacation, they become sick, like the flu-like symptoms, everything bubbles up to the surface. And this is because the body has not allowed for this inflammation to show up, because it's pushing with you. It's saying, yes, let's go. And when you finally have a moment to rest, meaning you're on vacation, you're on the beach, that's when your body is sick as a dog, because now it's catching up, it's recuperating, if you will. And the recuperation seems like you're sick, like you're finally, like you feel worse than before, but in fact it's your body cleaning house.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the drugs, corticosteroids, are used in autoimmune conditions to reduce inflammation and reduce if the immune system is overactive. So it makes sense that the natural hormone cortisol that we produce reduces the immune system, or suppresses the immune system and reduces inflammation. That's what it's. So you need more cortisol if you have more infections, even if they're chronic infections, and you need more cortisol if you are very inflamed.
All right. Okay. So how does high cortisol become low cortisol?
Yeah. So this is now when we're in that high stress state, high stress all the time, but we can't keep up with it anymore. And that is low cortisol, or I say an imbalance, or adrenal fatigue is something, a term that was used. It was coined by a Dr. James Wilson. He was a naturopathic doctor. He also had a PhD and is a chiropractor. And he worked in practice, clinical practice, basically helping people with this, helping people with burnout, using a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today. And his theory is that just basically your adrenal glands will become depleted. They'll just become, in a way, tired. I know sometimes like that sounds a little weird to say, but yes, you have so much stress and your body just can't keep up because also you're not nourishing yourself. Your body can't make something out of nothing. So
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
What I see also on the sheet here is waking up at 3 a.m. would be potentially a sort of a repercussion of having this sort of really high stress level. So what's happening at 3 a.m. that's causing someone to wake up?
So a couple things could be going on. So first, because I don't like to call it adrenal fatigue or low cortisol, I just like to say imbalance of cortisol. So that natural cortisol curve that we mentioned where it's high in the morning, dips down throughout the day, is thrown off balance. So cortisol is supposed to be at its lowest at 3 a.m. approximately. If for whatever reason it's spiking, it could be spiking because maybe you had coffee too late, or maybe you didn't eat the right foods during the day and now your blood sugar is dipping. So if your blood sugar dips really low in the middle of the night, cortisol is going to spike and wake you up. By the way, this is why babies wake up in the middle of the night, because babies aren't able to control their blood sugar as well as adults, and they only have little tiny stomachs, so they can only eat so much. So they're waking up to eat. It's also why your kids sometimes might wake up like in the middle of the night. So if you find your children wake up in the middle of the night, maybe they need a protein-rich snack before bed. Something light, but protein-rich might help them sleep throughout the night. And same goes for adults.
Okay, so for adults then, let's say you had a big, really carby meal, like a big bowl of pasta at like, I don't know, 6 p.m. or something.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Okay, 8 p.m.
Well, even 6, yeah.
All right, big bowl, and then you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night. So you're saying that bowl of pasta is going to spike your blood sugar, and then it's going to dip down, and in the middle of the night, your body's going to say, "Whoa, this is weird. Like I need something." Is that what would cause it to potentially spike again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So cortisol is coming in to spike your blood sugar, but cortisol also wakes you up. So that's why you're waking up.
Okay. So what else could cause that to happen? Would it be like just having too many sweets during the day?
Yep. Anything that's going to spike the blood sugar or anything that's going to spike cortisol. So maybe you're
Too much coffee?
Yeah. So maybe if you had coffee, because sometimes there are people who are having caffeinated beverages all day because they're like, oh, well, I'm tired at 6 p.m. So I need to have another coffee.
Or a Coke. Diet Coke is their beverage of choice at dinner.
Some people just have coffee after dinner. It's just a normal thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So how do we fix this problem?
So the first thing you need to do, the easiest way to balance cortisol, and you're not going to like it, Eileen already mentioned it, is to avoid caffeine or reduce the amount of caffeine. So if you're like really burnt out, I understand how hard this is going to be. You just have to kind of slowly wean yourself off while making these other changes that support you. So kind of while you're taking away the crutch, you're supporting yourself with what you actually need, which is you need good food.
Yeah, and Kirsten, she's got a good method of how she works with clients. So let's say you're the type of person that has 3 coffees a day. She'll say, take away the coffee. Start with taking away the coffee, the one that you drink the latest. Let's say your final coffee is 3 p.m. Start by removing that or replacing it with something non-caffeinated. Then work your way up to replacing the noon coffee, and then work your way up to your morning coffee. And so that way you're weaning yourself off, you're improving your cortisol levels throughout the day, and removing that final coffee won't be as difficult.
Mm-hmm. All right.
It literally sounds like you're weaning yourself off drugs.
Yeah, and
well, caffeine is a drug, and don't get me going. It's a topic for another day.
Yeah,
but
it's okay. We've had many conversations about this, so I know how you feel.
Caffeine, and it's not regulated in any way, and that certain hot beverage companies that are on every corner, that they have the frappuccinos that are made with lots of sugar. So it appeals to obviously for income purposes. They're appealing it to the younger crowd, like the pre-teenage crowd, and they're getting these young adults hooked on caffeine before it's a real coffee, and then it's throwing off not just adrenal function, but adrenals work very tightly with your reproductive function, and girls having menstrual issues at a very young age could be because they've been having caffeine at a very pre-puberty setting.
I know the answer to this, but if you want to touch on it, because people are probably thinking, well, what about decaf?
Oh, this is my favorite question.
We
Go
covered this on the last one.
This is my favorite question. So many people think decaf is synonymous, meaning the same as caffeine free. Decaf is a great marketing ploy. And I always ask my clients, so when they say decaf, and most clients recognize, decaf means less caffeine. And I'll ask, well, how much less do you think? And they're thinking, 5%, 7%, 10% of the caffeine of a full coffee. It's 70% caffeinated.
Wow.
So decaf is only taking off 30%, up to 30%.
Wow.
So decaf, like I said, is a
scam.
A scam. Thank you. Okay. I didn't want to say it first, but
Like the fake Fugazi version of coffee. Okay.
Yes. And also decaf I don't like because the decaffeination process is very dirty. So you're exposing your body to more chemicals than you would in a regular coffee. So I say to my clients, I'd rather see you drink half a cup of normal coffee, no decaf chemical residues, and I assume tastes better for you, and you're getting less caffeine.
So aside from caffeine, what else can we do to regulate cortisol, blood sugar, all that stuff?
One of the main misconceptions about alternative or B lenders is that it's only for subprime clients who cannot qualify at the bank, but that's far from the truth. Alternative lenders allow higher borrowing capacity along with intuitive mortgage features that not only allow applicants to borrow at a higher amount, save money, and also it allows you to draw on your equity without touching an existing low interest rate mortgage. This allows more flexibility and also long-term money savings. I would love to connect with you for all your mortgage-related questions. You can reach me at 647-961-3281, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Mortgage Dawn.
So you need to eat blood sugar balancing meals. So blood sugar balancing meal, it's going to include some kind of protein, and it's going to include some kind of healthy fat. So what's a healthy fat?
Oh, my favorite. Healthy fats, avocados, olives, olive oil, nuts and seeds.
Salmon?
Salmon's a good one.
Okay. This is what we call our smash fish. Smash,
so
Yeah.
salmon's
acronym
good.
for...
Yeah. So we also, salmon's it's going to be a good source of protein and some healthy fat. So it's got
Salmon, mackerel.
anchovies, sardines, and herring.
Right. Those are the smash fish, all full of healthy fats.
Yeah, specifically the omega-3 fats. And those are the ones that are particularly good for the brain. You don't have to have them at every single meal, just as long as the good fats are ones that are going to be coming from whole foods. Because when you take the oils out of these foods and you process them heavily, that it becomes something that your body can't really recognize. So that's like the canola oil, the vegetable oils.
Sunflower, safflower.
Yeah, anything that's fried. Those are the bad fats. And but those other ones are the good fats that are going to keep you full longer. In terms of carbohydrates, if you're really burnt out, I don't actually recommend a low carb diet. I recommend a slow carb diet. So go with the carbohydrates that have the fiber in them. So those are like whole grains, brown rice, quinoa. That could even include the pasta versions of those. So quinoa pasta, brown rice pasta, beans and legumes, good source of carbohydrates and protein.
And so, sorry to interrupt. So a slow carb, meaning it's absorbed slowly into the bloodstream. Oatmeal is another one. So let's say you had oatmeal for breakfast. It's slowly releasing or slowly keeping your blood sugars even, as opposed to saying have a donut where that's, I'll call it, if you can say the same thing, a fast carb, where it spikes your blood sugar like crazy and then it crashes. What I like, if I know I have a busy morning, I'll have oatmeal for breakfast because it keeps your blood sugars even, and super important, cognitive function is really good. You're not sharp for a minute and then fuzzy. You are strong the whole morning through.
So where would we put gnocchi on this list?
Okay, so you need to make.
You can put gnocchi on the list.
Yeah,
with concessions.
We make it, right?
Like on the good list or the bad
No,
list?
it's on the good list.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
as Kirsten said, you want to have a protein. So if you had gnocchi and you tossed it with, shredded chicken, or if you had chicken on the side and you had some veggies, some greens, stuff to balance out the white flour that is your gnocchi, you're fine.
I also make my own gnocchi and I use chickpea flour. So
Yeah. So hers is gluten
and
free.
eggs from my chickens, fresh eggs.
Yeah.
And
I absolutely love watching your recipes that you guys share, because it's always something really delicious, but something that you can feel good about with those little adjustments. And people don't realize how easy the adjustments are.
Super
yes,
easy.
yeah. And so even like going back to the oatmeal example is that I find, and I have tested this, or if I have just a bowl of plain oatmeal and I don't add anything that has more protein in it, I'm going to be hungry in an hour or two. But if I have oatmeal and I put a bunch of almond butter in it and sprinkle hemp seeds on it, and you're going to want to put like some maple syrup and cinnamon, like some few berries, you can make it taste good. Flavor is important too. Then you're going to be full. Like full until lunch for sure.
Mm-hmm. Drink lots of water.
Yes.
So does drinking water impact your cortisol level?
Absolutely. Because if your body's just not, remember, cortisol is going to be high anytime your body's not really able to function how it should. So when you drink enough water, everything is just flowing properly because these nutrients that you're taking need to get places. And so if you have enough water and you're able to expel waste as well, because you don't want to be, slowing yourself down because you can't expel waste properly. So water is just going to keep everything running smoothly.
And if I may interject, there is a way to drink water properly. In a perfect world, you're drinking water on an empty stomach. Because if you drink with a meal or copious amounts with a meal, you are diluting your digestive juices. So even if you're eating something healthy, spinach salad, quinoa, chickpeas, what have you, if you're drinking too much water with that kind of a meal or any meal, you're diluting your digestive juices and you're not absorbing all the nutrients that you are consuming. So it's not just what you eat, it's what you absorb.
So when you drink the water, is it like half an hour after eating?
No. I'd say at least an hour to 2 hours after. Start drinking. So let's say you had breakfast at 8 a.m. Let's say you finish eating by 8:30 in the morning. Between 8:30, you finish by 8:30, it takes an hour and a half for it to digest your breakfast. So by 10 a.m., your stomach is empty. So to drink copious amounts of water between 10 a.m. and noon when you're going to have your next meal. Mm-hmm. That's how to drink.
And I'll drink water first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like as I said,
also,
that water should definitely be the first thing you drink.
Before breakfast.
Sometimes people like the warm water and lemon. So I either do that or I just have plain water, and sometimes I add a little bit of salt because remember we were mentioning balancing the electrolytes can be important for cortisol balance. So throw in a pinch of salt, and sometimes I'm drinking a liter of water first thing in the morning.
I was just about to ask what the recommendation is.
Keep in mind when I say I drink a liter of water, I am over 6 feet. So maybe like it does vary depending on
your
the size of a person. So because sometimes I'm drinking 2 liters, and maybe that'd be too much for some, but yeah, if you make that the first thing you drink, then you're going to be starting off your day hydrated.
Yes.
I see a couple vitamins here on the list. Are these just, you're mentioning, I guess, vitamins that you would get from your nutrition, or do you also recommend supplements?
Okay.
Both.
So my favorite phrase, as most nutritionists are big on pushing supplements, A, they want to ensure their clients are getting nutrients, and B, it is a secondary source of income for a lot of nutritionists. I always tell people your body wants to absorb nutrients from food. A supplement, the true meaning of the word supplement, it adds to something that's already there. So if you said, hey, I'm going to take vitamin C, great. It means you're already getting in copious amounts of fruits and vegetables, vitamin C rich fruits and vegetables, and you want to top it up a bit, that's up to you. But remember, your body wants to absorb nutrients from food. So yes, we have a list of nutrients here, vitamins and minerals, but next to them is all the foods you can get them in. So we're not saying run out and buy supplements. Cannot say, I don't care how organic, how flawlessly processed these vitamins or supplements are. Nothing beats fresh food.
And with that being said, given that we're also working with people who are maybe, they're running at a deficit, they're already really exhausted and tired, and perhaps their diet isn't where they want to be, and they're not able to make changes right away. They're making changes slowly. We're still trying to make changes, but in the meantime, there are certain supplements that you can take to get you back in the black, right? That's right. If you're running a deficit, we want to get you back. So everything's positive. And so there are supplements, but they should have a very specific purpose, and they should only be temporary. It shouldn't be that you're just taking all these supplements for the rest of your life. There's a few exceptions, like vitamin D, if you live in Canada, for sure. It's something you're probably going to need unless we move somewhere tropical. But other than that, they should have a purpose and should be temporary. But should we get into what are the vitamins? Do you want to go through the vitamins so these are specific vitamins for stress. and for cortisol production.
Okay, so first vitamin would be vitamin C. When your body is in stress mode, your body is using up a lot of vitamin C. And vitamin C is called a vitamin because we have to, as humans, we need it from an external source. Of course, we automatically think citrus fruits or fruits, and definitely citrus fruits are fantastic, but also the highest source of vitamin C on the planet is parsley.
Cool.
Believe it
Parsley?
or not. Yes. And so the tabulis, if you're having a parsley,
Like a parsley salad.
or so parsley is fantastic. Broccoli, as a vegetable, of course, all the fruits. And I was saying how vitamin C, our bodies go through vitamin C like crazy. If you look at your dogs and cats, they make vitamin C internally. They don't need to get it from a food source. And so that's one of the things that differentiate us from them is their bodies will make vitamin C as needed, whereas we have to get it from an external source. So taking in lots of vitamin C is important. The best anti-stress vitamin is vitamin B5. Again, you can get that from broccoli, sunflower seeds, avocados, tomatoes. Tomatoes also high in vitamin C. Salmon, chicken, and what we call the anti-stress mineral, magnesium. Magnesium you get from any dark green. And magnesium is probably the only mineral or supplement you want to be taking in the evening because it does have such a calming effect. It's recommended you take it more in the evening and not in the morning with the rest of your
So
supplements.
just on the B5 thing, if you're getting farmed salmon, are you getting B5 or not really?
Probably not.
Not to a lesser degree.
Because you are what your food eats matters because they have to be getting the B vitamins from somewhere. But more specifically with the omega-3s, because we mentioned salmon has omega-3s. So if the salmon's just eating corn, not sure. You might be getting some vitamin B5,
But not
particularly.
Not as high value.
Yeah, because we're also trying to get the omega-3s. That's why I suggest wild salmon.
Okay. And then I see herbs lower.
Yeah.
So are we talking about marijuana or other kinds?
You skipped over omega-3.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Go
we
ahead.
did mention
Well,
omega-3s
yeah.
earlier. We can just go through quickly so omega-3s, hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and walnuts. So those are all the seeds. And then we mentioned the smash fish. And so that's salmon, mackerel, anchovies, and sardines, and herring. So we'd remember it by the acronym SMASH. But herbs, I get this question all the time.
It was just a joke because we talked about
I
it
know
on the
about
last one.
marijuana, and I don't have anything against that herb, but there's just so many other amazing medicinal herbs. I went and I was picking strawberries with my family a little while ago, and I found wild chamomile, pineapple weed, everywhere in between the strawberry patches, and it was an organic strawberry patch. Wow. So I knew it was natural, and I'm picking it. And I'm just trying to put so I'm filling my strawberry basket that I paid for with herbs. And that was one of the first things people are like, well, what is it? What are you using? And I was like, oh, this is a really good calming herb. And they're like marijuana. I'm like, no, it's way better.
Well, it is called pineapple weed,
yes.
so you can understand why.
Yes. So pineapple weed is one of my favorites, and it's wild chamomile. But there's other class of herbs that help you modulate your nervous system. So it's going to give you energy, but not like the jitters like coffee would. So
Not
it's kind of help
energy,
to balance you. Some of them are a little more stimulating. Some are more calming. Some affect people differently. So you kind of have to find what works for you. But here are my favorites that you can find in a health food store, pretty much any health food store. Before I go into that, just with any herbs, it's very, they can be contraindicated for certain medications.
So check.
So just double check, especially when you're with herbs. With any supplement, particularly herbs. Okay. Ashwagandha is one of my favorites. It's like a root that's ground into a powder. You can add like a teaspoon to a smoothie. I even put it in like coffee grounds. So you can put it, if you're making your coffee, like I make it in a French press, you put it in like a teaspoon per tablespoon of coffee. And so now you're drinking your coffee and you're not going to get the jitters from the coffee. It's going to help balance it out. I really like holy basil, or tulsi is what it's called. And this is a nice calming one, but it's not going to make you sleepy. So it's a good 3 p.m. tea. Rhodiola is a nice one as well. And I also like maca root. And maca root's a really good one. Again, it's nice. It's stimulating. It's good in a morning smoothie to give you energy. It's also good for fertility. And so you could even like make, and it goes well with chocolate. So you could make like a chocolate maca mocha smoothie. So if you're still like set on drinking coffee and you're like one of those people who really like frappuccinos or iced coffees, throw in like half a cup of coffee, teaspoon of maca, teaspoon of ashwagandha, tablespoon of raw cacao powder, whatever milk you like maybe some almond milk. Like I said, I go dairy free, and some sweetener. You could throw some protein powder, spinach, anything. So you've got a full meal, but it's all blended and it's ready to go. So especially if you're one of those people who doesn't like to eat breakfast because you say you don't have time or you don't feel like it because you're too stressed, you just have a drink and it's got all the nutrients you need, and that's going to keep you going. So then hopefully you're going to feel hungry by lunch because you've kept your blood sugar stable, and maybe eventually you can take that coffee away because you're going to find you don't need it. And why don't we talk about other teas that are nice?
Right. And so my favorite, there's a lot of, I'll call them artificial coffees or coffee substitutes out on the market. My favorite, the brand name is Ticino. They make a great line of roasted dandelion-based coffee substitutes. And I've made many a recipe using the coffee replacement from Ticino. They have a nice dandelion dark roast, the dandelion coconut nut, and I'll put those, or caramel nut, and I'll put those in the recipes that Kirsten mentioned or something similar. And the people I'm sharing it with, they can't tell. They have the mocha flavor. They think it tastes great, and I'm thrilled because there's no caffeine. Chai rooibos or rooibos is another option. Rooibos is South African, means red bush. And what's great about rooibos teas, just like many like green teas, people say, oh, they love their green tea for the antioxidants. Rooibos, full of antioxidants, but naturally caffeine-free. And it tastes like a black tea, and you can, add your milk of choice or your sweetener of choice, and you see it sometimes as a chai flavor and or as a vanilla flavor, and that you can pick up any health food store.
Yeah. And now what about we're going to talk about some herbs that are good for nighttime. So those were the ones that are good for during the day to kind of replace the coffee. Now these ones will help you sleep. I will say if you're not doing all these other things, like if you're still stressed all day and you're having like multiple cups of coffee, maybe the chamomile tea is not going to help you sleep. But if you're doing all the other things, the chamomile tea will help. So chamomile's one. Chamomile's pretty gentle. It's nice for digestion. It's also okay to give children. I'd say children over 2. The other ones are a little bit more stronger. I'd say more for adults. Lavender. I like lavender tea. Not everyone likes the taste of lavender. The essential oil, not taken internally, topically, like in a carrier oil, can also help. Lemon balm is one of my favorites. It's got a lemony flavor. Catnip, not just for cats, it actually helps to relax people. Passion flower, valerian, those are the more stronger ones that are good for if you have anxiety. They might, they're kind of for right before bed for sure. I don't think you'd want to go driving after those. You could also you go to a health food store, you look for a nice sleepy time tea. You're going to have a nice blend there.
Right. And we want to make the point, valerian root especially, please double check if you're taking any medications because it can be contraindicated.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we dive into balancing cortisol? So I know you mentioned with the teas and whatnot, but other ways to do it would be sunlight. That's one important way. Avoiding screen time at night, so avoiding your phone, your emails, all that stuff.
It can also mean TV.
Yes, so because that's emitting a blue light that's going to mimic sunlight, like the sunrise. Now you can shift to night mode on your phone, so please do that. But you also have to be conscious of what you're consuming on the screen. So if you're watching something really stressful, you're watching the news, that's going to affect
your stock price on your phone.
That's going to affect cortisol too, right? So getting the sunlight in the morning, avoiding the light at night is going to help just kind of balance your circadian rhythm, which will then balance your cortisol levels. Other things you can do. Biggest thing is maybe you need to reassess your priorities. Maybe you're taking on too much. That's something that's outside the scope of a nutritionist. We can't really tell you, but that's something someone has to think about for themselves. Sometimes there's mental health issues, like you're dealing with some past trauma or some stress, something that needs a psychologist, psychiatrist, something outside of our scope. What else?
Spinal misalignment is interesting.
Yes. So we connect with chiropractors and osteopaths sometimes, and they always talk about how the spinal misalignments cause cortisol to increase. So maybe you need
that is an internal trauma, right?
Yep.
Got it.
You can also try like some sleep hypnosis. I like the podcast Sleep Magic. Anything. There's lots of different podcasts that are good for, like, they have guided meditations or anything to help you relax. If you find you're having trouble meditating, then I want to mention yoga, because if you just try to meditate and you're finding it's not working, there's a reason for that. Meditation is not something that you can just do like out of nowhere. Like you can't just suddenly try to quiet your mind. The asanas, the movements in yoga, so the postures, they were designed to help yogis meditate and sit for hours. So if you're having trouble with meditating and just sitting down, maybe you need to try some of the more physical movements in yoga. Like, I'm a vinyasa yoga teacher.
Yes, I want to throw in there.
Yes,
Kirsten knows
that's
whenever
why I'm
she
talking.
speaks,
Yeah,
she is a
I don't know
yoga
if I
teacher.
mentioned that earlier. So yes, that's why I'm talking about yoga. I'm also a vinyasa yoga teacher. And so that's what I never could just sit and meditate, but I can do vinyasa yoga practices, and that helps to kind of calm down the energy, and then afterwards I can meditate. So that might also help you.
All right.
Yeah.
So we did just touch on the yoga point here. Acupuncture.
Acupuncture. So as an acupuncturist, I can tell you, I mean, without getting into the big discussion of how acupuncture works, I can say that there are certain kinds of energy, and when you've got too much of this excess energy, it shows up in the body as anxiety. And acupuncture is good for many things, and releasing anxiety is something that acupuncture is absolutely stellar at. And contrary to the medical world, where people who have high anxiety are taking anti-anxiety medications, the problem with those is that it dulls the mind as well as it lowers the anxiety levels, whereas acupuncture releases that excess anxiety energy, and all you're left with is a feeling of calm combined with you're still sharp, cognitively still sharp as a tack. And that is what, especially I'll say the A-types, your listeners, I say that with love, in a good way, your ambitious listeners, that they want full cognitive ability without the stress of being anxious or having what I call 1,000 thoughts a second, that their mind is so busy that it's really hard to focus. And they have, multiple stressors, multiple problems, issues that they're dealing with at the same time. And acupuncture helps release this anxiety energy so that you have the cognitive ability to just focus on the tasks at hand without the chatter of the anxiety bothering you, pulling you down.
I had no idea. No, I was just saying, when I think of acupuncture, I never thought of the mental part of...
Yeah, because acupuncture is fantastic for reducing cortisol. Another talk for another day, but I work with a lot of fertility women, women having trouble getting pregnant. And if you have high cortisol, you will, I don't want to say you'll not get pregnant, but it dramatically interferes with your ability to make progesterone. And any woman trying to get pregnant knows that a high progesterone level or a sustained high progesterone level in your first trimester is vital. Otherwise, you will not have a successful pregnancy.
What about massages, things of that nature as well?
Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, so regular massages, I guess, would you recommend that? Or would you think
they
that...
release stress, yeah, because they are, it's a relaxing, it puts you in a relaxed space, and that is reducing your cortisol.
Okay, so a lot of different things you could do.
Yeah.
Given us a lot of tools,
yes,
for sure.
And that's what we're not doing that in the intention to overwhelm. We hope that listening to this podcast doesn't increase your cortisol, because you're like, oh, I have to do all these different things. It's like, no, you have all these different tools available to you. You do what you can when you can, and then you'll find that as you do something new, it becomes easier. So as soon as you start to, you start to change your diet, then suddenly the next thing becomes easier. Then you don't need coffee as much. Then you can do something else, Yeah.
I think the important thing to remember is, and even just personally speaking, but even when I talk to other people, yes, like you said, satisfy, make sure that there's no medical underlying condition, but potentially be open and ask questions. Is there another way? Is there a more natural way? Can I achieve the same result without taking medications or things that are going to just give me other symptoms?
If I may throw in there, and people are shocked when I say this, you have to remember every single cell in your body, and you've got 50 to 75 trillion, every single cell wants to put out at 100% all the time. But if you're only feeding it 30, 50, 70% of the nutrients it needs, it only can perform at that level. So when you open up the doors and say, hey, I'm going to drink more water. Hey, I'm going to get in a smoothie. Like I said, it's easier to increase a good habit than to remove a bad. You're starting to give more nutrients to your body. Or Kirsten, as a yoga teacher, can tell you, the first thing to do is breath. And what is the most important nutrient for the body? Oxygen. Increasing your oxygen. All you do is take a bunch of deep breaths every morning, preferably in sunlight, etc. Then this is already giving more nutrients to your cells, and so you can perform better.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people would think, oh, that sounds hokey. That's just, really magical stuff to think about. But when you really dive down to it, like you've discussed here, it's very much science. It's very much digging down to our atoms and, the way we're chemically combined. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
We didn't touch on this, but what about immune system? Because, now everybody's kind of getting back together. There was that period of time where people weren't really seeing each other and like nobody was really getting sick, or it wasn't as often. Now everything's open again, whatever. What can we do to strengthen our immune systems? And for those that have kids, also, what can you do for your kids?
Okay, so a lot of what we just talked about. So balancing cortisol, because an infection is a stress. So if you have good balanced cortisol, you're going to be better capable of handling whatever pathogens are coming your way. So whether we have, germ theory, which says that there's germs and we get a germ and that's what makes us sick. That is true. But there's also terrain theory, which says how healthy our body is going to determine how well we can handle that germ. And so that's two schools of thought, but I think it's both. And so we can, strengthen the terrain by making sure our cortisol is well balanced. Other things we can do is a lot of the adaptogenic herbs are also good for the immune system. A lot of the, because they're nervous system modulators, but they're also immune modulators. And so immune modulators, also called deep immune herbs, help to kind of strengthen and balance your immune cells so that when we're coming into like this cold and flu season, we can be stronger. So one of the things that I normally do for my kids, but I didn't do this year and they got a cold, is we take Deep Immune, St. Francis Deep Immune for kids. So there's one that's for kids and it's in a little tincture. It's within a certain age range. I believe it's over 1, over 2. Read the label, please follow the label. And you give it to your kids and that's going to help them just kind of, it's going to prevent them from getting sick.
They're also, tincture is usually easier for a child because it's a drop, but there's also capsules. So if you're on the road and a tincture is too cumbersome to dose yourself with, capsules are also available.
Yeah. Other thing.
Do you guys just, and this is a personal question, but do you guys take supplements for your immune systems, or do you just try to do it through your nutrition?
I try to do it through my nutrition mostly. If I get sick, the first thing I do is I take vitamin C. And as I said, my kids had a cold a week ago. And so I started getting a cold and I started putting vitamin C, ascorbic acid powder in my water. And you can take vitamin C up to bowel tolerance, which means exactly what it sounds, is that if you take too much, your body will get rid of it via the bowels. It's not dangerous, but I guess there is a possibility that you could take so much that you dehydrate yourself. So please be careful, be sensible. Start like 1,000 per dose, 1,000, and then just and take it consistently. So take it in your water, a couple thousand, like 1,000 3 times a day. And then
this is only if you're sick, right?
I would only recommend it if you're sick or if you're like under a lot of stress. I've done this if like we've had a death in the family or something like really where I'm like, I don't want it to get sick right now. And I know we're under a lot of stress. So something like that, so that you could do. And so you take it in the water and you're drinking that all day. You're drinking vitamin C water, like I said, a couple thousand, couple times a day. And you can do that for your children, obviously much lower dose, and mix it with juice or something like that. I'd say 500 milligrams in their water. And that's going to help. I also will take probiotics sometimes because that gut health and immune health go together. We take vitamin D, especially in the winter. But other than that, not really. I have a cupboard full of herbs, and a lot of it is stuff I've grown or I've foraged myself. And so then I'm making certain teas and stuff like that. We would be here for hours if I started talking about all my different herbs. But just say like I'm trying to think if there's some good ones I want to mention.
Stinging nettle.
Yes.
You made some for me.
Yes, that's more for, I'd say it's more cleansing. The ones I take for goldenrod is one. Right now it's allergy season, and you're going to see beautiful goldenrod fields, and you're also going to see fields of ragweed. The goldenrod tea, please be careful when you're foraging. Maybe I don't know if you can find it somewhere, but goldenrod tea is actually good for allergies. So it doesn't cause allergies. It's actually helps reduce allergy symptoms, and it's very high in antioxidants.
So I wanted to just go back on the supplements that you were discussing. Now, for example, vitamin C. If you just went to Costco and picked up a vitamin C supplement, from my understanding, what I've heard, that isn't necessarily like a great supplement. Like there's different qualities of supplements. Do you agree with that, or do you think just go to Costco and get whatever's available?
I mean, I think the best supplement is going to be what's available to you, what's accessible to you. So I do want to, like, when I answer, understand that, not everyone can get the absolute greatest supplement all the time. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, happens to be one that's very, I don't want to say the quality doesn't matter, but it's easy to mimic. Like, it's easy to synthesize this. There's other supplements that, like B vitamins, for instance, that matters a little bit more.
Quality-wise.
They're methylated, like that's a whole thing. So the absorption matters. It's that vitamin C is easily absorbable. That's the biggest part. So regardless of the form, yes, maybe there's impurities or something else, but regardless of the form, you're going to be okay with pretty much whatever. I use like a Natural Factors. That's a fairly cheap
Common
brand.
brand.
Yeah.
I have a question on this. Would people get the same effect from having, lemon in their water, or having eating oranges, or drinking freshly squeezed orange juice? Would they have the same effect as taking a vitamin C supplement?
It wouldn't be as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not getting as much of the milligrams that you would need to combat.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Just only when you're really sick and you're really desperate.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it all the time, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as Kirsten mentioned before, is that you want to take a supplement for a specific purpose and for a specific time frame. You're not just saying, I'm going to blindly take vitamin C every day of my life.
So like a woman's multivitamin, useless, you're saying you're
Not
taking...
useless. You
Not
can't use
useless.
Didn't
Not
you hear their
useless,
disclaimer, Mandy?
It's if you're saying like a lot of women will take, again, I work with fertility women. Women will take a prenatal just to up their overall nutrient absorption in their body as they prepare for conception and pregnancy.
Yes.
So this again is a targeted reason, and that's where I support it. I mean, when I'm speaking with these women, I'm trying to get them to weed out their not so good foods and eat more nutrient dense foods specific to conceiving and carrying a healthy baby. And so and I tell them, if you want to top it up with a supplement, go ahead. But if you're eating really clean, that's doing 90% right there.
Okay.
All right. So we covered a lot of ground. As a summary, I think what I got from this is just try to live a balanced life. Take care of yourself. If you're really stressed, your nutrition's important. Reducing coffee and caffeine is important. Also doing things like, relaxing things like going for a walk, being in nature, rest. If you need to take a bath once in a while, take a bath. You need massages and acupuncture, then do that.
I was going to say, throw in there, play with your dog. I have a dog.
Yeah. We're saying animals help reduce cortisol.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And then also spiking your blood sugar. So not having like really sugary foods and then finding yourself waking up in the middle of the night because your blood sugar just dipped.
If I could throw in there, I mean, I know we're in the summary phase. I am a chocoholic and a sweetaholic, but as a nutritionist, I can, not that I've created, but I've found recipes, modified recipes. In fact, Kirsten can tell you just before we came here, we had chocolate pudding, but it was vegan, gluten-free, full of healthy fats, chia seeds, hemp seeds, avocado. And so it is possible to get in all your nutrients in a format that tastes phenomenal. I call them everything cookies. Complete proteins because it's got oatmeal, it's got almond butter, but it's got chia seed, hemp seed, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds. So it's full of seeds, healthy fats, and this bodes for a very even blood sugar. And but it's got chocolate chips, vegan chocolate chips, so it tastes great.
Yeah.
Maple syrup.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really healthy recipes. It just takes a little effort.
It takes a little more effort to find them. We've got our favorite recipe websites. We're happy to share those. And so I can't say it enough. Eating clean and healthy does not mean boring, bland cardboard.
And not the same thing every day, right?
Gosh, no.
There was somebody in the office earlier saying that he eats the exact same meal all the time. And that's not good for you anyway,
No, it's
because
not good. You need
nutrition,
variety.
you need nutrition from different
sources.
Yeah.
sources.
I mean, if you're just starting out and you just have like a couple of meals because that's easier, because if you don't go to your go-to meal, you're gonna go order pizza, then sure. But then yes, at some point you do want to expand and get used to it. Yeah.
All right. So if anyone's interested in getting more information, then they can check out your website, essentialbalance.ca, or on Instagram and Facebook at Essential Balance Holistic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you want to add? Any services that you're offering at this time?
Well, as mentioned, I specialize in fertility as well. As an acupuncturist, I specialize in facial acupuncture. So meaning to make the facial skin look as healthy as possible while working on wellness for the rest of the body. Kirsten has her specialties.
Yes. So what I have, it's in the works right now, is I would like to I'm trying to combine what we talked about today with nutrition and yoga to help do exactly what we're talking about. Recover from being burnt out, get more energy, get more focus. So I'm coming up with a program that's going to basically use yoga to support and relax you so that you can more easily make these changes to your health. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm trying to combine the two. That's in the works. So stay connected,
tuned.
stay tuned. Check out our website and follow us on Instagram for updates on that.
You've also been really helpful on the children's side of things, like with supporting children's health and things like that. So, yeah, I think you both are a dynamic team. Mm-hmm. We've had the pleasure of working with you both, and you're amazing. And that's why I know George asked you ladies to come back in here today for
Thank you very much for having us.
I'm sure it won't be the last, but
thank you for the 7 pages of notes.
That was me. I'm sorry.
Well, we like to be prepared.
Yeah.
And so when you're prepared, you feel confident. And if you're a little nervous, you have something to look about. You have a piece of paper to look down at.
Great.
It's all
Thank
good.
you. We'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Well Off Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then I'd really appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes and let us know your thoughts. In order for us to get a larger audience, it's really important to have reviews, so your support is extremely appreciated. And also, don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, I'm George Almasri. Have a great day.